This video is about how to manage your money not to run out of it during the divorce process, and how to manage your divorce so that you have money left for your kids' college education. I liked when one judge told us at the beginning of the trial, do you want your attorney's children to go through college, or do you want your own children to go through college? What it means is sometimes parties are so invested in fighting each other that they spend all their savings into litigation, attorney's fees. How to avoid that? At the beginning of each case, look at cost-benefit analysis. For example, if you have assets worth $300,000 and your spouse is very litigious, sometimes it's better to offer a little bit more than half to avoid the attorney's fees payment towards your own attorney and towards the other side's attorney. I'm not saying to be a pushover and just give up and not fight when it's reasonable and becomes a big nightmare. What I'm talking about is at every stage in your divorce, create a cost-benefit analysis. In some cases, it's impossible. In some cases, you have another side who is asking for child support, making $3 million and is creating a bunch of theories, and you spend $200,000, only end up paying a couple thousand. It just doesn't make sense. But let's talk about cases where it's reasonably, logically understandable how to avoid going bankrupt. First of all, when you hire an attorney, get a clear expectation what the hourly rate is, what is the minimum tact, meaning billable. Let's say if you have a call for 5 minutes, are they billing for 5 minutes or are they billing for 12 minutes? So that's called billable tact. Are they sending invoices once in 6 months? I had lawyers send invoices once a year. I sent invoices once every week. That way, a client can have a reasonable expectation where their money is going. So for example, if they put money into a client trust account and they get an invoice, that money is being taken out from that trust account. What can cost a lot of money? The biggest money consumer is a trial. Why? In order to prepare for trial, and most people, when they're first time client, first time going through divorce, they don't understand how much time it takes. They understand when they have to do it themselves. But first of all, in terms of amount of hours it takes to prepare for trial, it could be easily for 4 hours in trial. Trial time could be easily 30 hours of work. Why? First, preparing your own witness. Your own client could be a great person, but horrible witness, meaning when you ask them a question, they ramble, they're afraid to say the truth, they think what they need to say is what's expected to say. I have seen it all. And sometimes it takes 8 hours just to prepare my own client to answer a question. If I'm asking a question that is requiring yes or no answer, they can't just say yes or no. They have to explain. So just doing the practice and helping them understand what it means to answer a question and how to answer a question, preparing one witness. What if we have expert witness? What if we have other witnesses? So each witness would need to understand what it means if the answer is being objected to. They need to pause and things like that. Procedurally, also a lot of explanation and also practice, because one thing is theory and another thing when they are out of practice and they forget. So that's why I meet with a client at least one time, if not 2 or 3 times, depending on the level of confidence I feel putting them on the stand. Sometimes I never feel confident putting my own client on the stand. I tell them, you're not ready. And then we potentially figure out a different strategy, make a different offer, or whatever it takes, or even meet how many times we need to meet in order for the client to be prepared. I created this book to help you understand the divorce process without getting lost or without getting a heart attack. You can buy it on Amazon in all formats, including audio format. Exhibits. Sometimes exhibits could be 2,000 pages. So each exhibit has to be marked and admitted if I want to be the exhibit part of the evidence. So I have to prepare exhibit list, attachments, and corresponding questions to each of the exhibits so that every single piece of evidence is submitted for the court decision. cross-examination questions for opposing side, direct and cross-examination for my own witnesses, my own client. So every question has to be carefully drafted in advance so that, if I forget something, I checked it off. So all of that takes a lot of thinking, a lot of time, a lot of strategy, because sometimes judges don't give unlimited amount of time, so I cannot ask, tell me how your walk at the park was. Every question needs to matter, basically, because I have to compare what the code section says for each particular case, and the question needs to correspond. So, for example, if I'm in child support trial, then I need to prove ability to pay and percentage of visitation, potential imputation of income, if there are any injuries and limited ability to work, explain that, prepare other witnesses. So all of the trial could be easily, 35, 45, just for 4 hours of trial. And when a client asks that question, how much does the trial cost? Each attorney charges different hourly rates. So for the purposes of this video, I will just say 35 to 45 hours, and then you multiply it by the hourly rate your attorney charges. Then how much does average divorce cost? I would say 25 to 35 hours, billable hours of attorney work. What it takes for a divorce from the beginning to an end to complete: filing for divorce, doing financial disclosures. Filing for divorce is probably within an hour. Financial disclosures, most clients don't do it right, so it always takes at least an hour to 5 hours, depending on the complexity of the case, doing preliminary declaration of disclosure. And there is a very important point. Both parties have fiduciary duty to disclose all assets. It does not matter if you want to divide it or not, if you're separate the community, you have to disclose current assets. So that's preliminary declaration of disclosures. And then we have about 5 hours of marital settlement agreement drafting, and then judgment package. The reason why it takes 35 to 45 hours is because everything in between. Negotiating spousal support, negotiating child support, calculating how much community versus separate is it, hiring an expert, doing discovery, if someone is not disclosing, going backwards for, let's say, 7 years to look if a spouse spent money during the marriage that the other spouse didn't approve of, to get a credit for that. Things like that take up time. Discovery could easily be 10 hours because you have to draft the discovery, then you send it out, then you have to review it, and then let's say they didn't produce it, then you have meet and confer, then you have to file a motion to compel. It can be easily time-consuming. I prefer not to file motions to compel because they take more time and money than actually subpoenaing the bank accounts from the banks. Overall, I would say before you go to this process, divorce process, consider your strengths, weaknesses, and try to budget your divorce so that you put so much effort into a topic that is really important to you. For example, if custody is important to you, then this is what the focus should be, because it's easy. It could be custody evaluation, which is another, $20,000, $30,000. If this is if you want to relocate, but if you start basically pick your battle. Because if you start doing a war on every single issue, a divorce can be easily 100 billable hours. Easily. So my suggestion, strategize with your attorney at the beginning and every stage in this process. This is how you avoid being resentful or, worst case, bankrupt from your divorce process or incur credit card debts for the divorce process. And last piece of advice, be reasonable. Because at the end of the day, if you have children, it's gonna affect your parenting, co-parenting forever. Filing for domestic violence only if you really feel threatened for your life, or some people file domestic violence restraining orders if they have co-parenting issues. So having a knowledgeable attorney, that's why I always say if you save money and consult a newbie, just consult at least one time an experienced attorney to adjust your strategy. Because a newbie might say, file for a restraining order, do all this stuff, and then the case is in a dead end without return. And then you're finding yourself in trial over things you didn't mean to do. I hope that was helpful. I will see you in my next consultation or in my next video. Bye.